So we're going to open up today's show. Before we're going to start with some Transformer talk, we're going to kind of deviate away from Transformers just for a moment. Um, Recently, famous actor Adam West passed away, and everyone knows him as the 1966 Batman, and our generation, people usually between their 20s and their 30s. Uh, at least I know in most of the United States, that wasn't really so much so their Batman. But I just wanted to just kind of touch up on this because in Canada, where me and Jaws D are from, the 66 Batman was a really big, very important thing here in Canada.
Yep.
I just want to just preface why, and then we'll get into our memories of it and stuff. But it's just after Batman Returns came out, the movie, and it made such a huge, I mean, the first Tim Burton movie was a big deal and stuff, but when Batman Returns came out, it just made such a huge impact on pop culture and stuff. Fox Kids started working on, and Fox specifically started working on a Batman the Animated Series, the famous Batman the Animated Series that we know today from Bruce Timm.
Well, it's more, I think, WB animation
Yeah,
specifically. But yeah, I get what you mean, though.
and I remember reading the back of one of my comic books growing up and seeing the ad advertising it saying it was coming to Fox and stuff. And I asked my mom, and I was like, "Oh, do we have Fox?" She's like, "No, we don't. That's an American channel." And to preface, Canada would not get Fox until 1995, many years later. So for the longest time, the
Everything
only
comes late to Canada.
yeah, well, at least up to that point, like
Yeah.
up until we didn't get like after we got Fox in 1995, I think we got a lot of channels that we were missing all those years. But so Batman Returns 1992, and then later in 1992, Batman the Animated Series comes out. Our local station, which was like our Cartoon Network slash Nickelodeon slash like our kids channel in Canada was YTV. That's our
Yep.
shit. The best way to
Like
put it.
youth television,
Yeah,
basically. YTV
and
for
so
short.
YTV, in order to make up for the fact that they couldn't get the exclusive rights to Batman the Animated Series, which at the time was only exclusive to Fox, they countered with that by giving us Batman 1966, Adam West, Burt Ward, the whole deal. And they ran the entire series starting in 1992. They played the movie, but what they did was they fragmented it, I believe, into 5 episodes. And then they even played the Green Hornet crossover stuff. And, what was good about YTV was because uh, before every show, in between the show, they would have what were called the DJ segments, which we kind of had like an on-screen host that would just talk in between shows and stuff and kind of hype up the next show and talk about local stuff and everything. And PJ Phil, shout out, I love PJ Phil. And again, if you're Canadian, you're like
Oh wait, they would call them VJs actually. Video
VJs, excuse me,
DJs, basically.
VJs.
Jockeys.
Yeah, did I say
Sorry, sorry.
VJs? Yeah, VJs. No, it was PJs. Oh my
No,
God.
no, yeah, yeah. PJ, they were all
Because it was
PJs.
PJ Fresh Phil. There we go. Oh my God, there's probably some Canadians yelling at us right now. How dare?
I think
Anyways,
VJs was more so for Much Music and MTV, I think. And
yeah.
then for YTV, they we're gonna make it different. PJs.
So PJ Phil used to kind of like always hype up the shows before you would watch them and stuff, and sometimes give a preface of what the episode was going to be about. And I remember like when we got 66 Batman, he would pump it up very highly and stuff. And again, we didn't get animated series Batman for a very long time, at least unless you were renting tapes or stuff. Uh, the funny thing is, for a lot of people actually saw that animated series for the first time when it was in theaters with Mask of the Phantasm.
Yep.
Like that's kind of the first time you ever saw it. So I mean, the toys were in stores,
Yeah, I was
but
definitely buying those toys. I think I
but
got first run Batman with the actual colors
yeah,
and the grappling hook, and
vanilla
then
Batman, as I always
didn't
call him.
even didn't even. I don't think I saw the show. Maybe I seen bits and pieces of the ads for the toys,
Well, that's
but
just
not
it.
even
Like
the show.
unless you got a VHS somewhere from somebody who managed to like rent
Tape
them
it
or
from the
something.
TV and send it to you.
Yeah, like there was no way. So for a lot of us, Batman was Adam West. It was Adam West and Michael Keaton. That was it for the longest time. And the funny thing is that I always found with this show was, as a child, I used to never really feel the datedness of something. Like, you could watch Bambi when you were a child and not realize, like this movie's like hella old,
Mm.
and we're talking hella old when you saw it in the 80s,
Yep, yep.
and same thing with Snow White, which I believe was from the 20s, if I remember correctly,
I think
which is
so.
a credit to Disney. But the point is I would watch Adam West Batman and go, you know what? This feels like it's something from a time that's not ours, which it did. It very had that 60s flavor to it and stuff. But I just absolutely loved its campiness. And I guess it kind of then leads into why years later I would love superhero parody stuff like The Tick and Harvey Birdman. But it's just, I loved that Batman to death. And I mean, years later when they did that crazy box set, which came with the Batmobile, and you push a button on the side and would sing the Batman theme. I bought that box set because I was just like, this was my Batman. It was my Batman. That and Keaton, are my childhood Batmans.
Did you
Um,
did you manage to get a hold of the last like animated Batman feature? Well, Batman DVD Blu-ray where it was Adam West and Burt Ward reprising their roles
yeah,
and actually fighting those guys again.
there was a few times when they returned together. I
But no,
believe
I
there
mean
was.
specifically for actually Batman and Robin.
Oh
That
yeah,
yeah,
well,
that was like I think last year or 2 years ago that
no,
came
because
out.
they did a while back. I remember I watched it specifically on television. They did one called Batman and Robin Return to the Batcave or
Oh, I
something,
remember that. I saw that.
and you know there was that, and then the one you're referring to, that was, I think it was called. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it was recently, where they reprised their roles, and it's an animated adventure and stuff, and it's animated in that style. I think it's called Return of the Cape Crusaders or something. I was going to say Return of the Joker, but that's not right.
Yeah, you're right. Return of the Cape
There you
Crusaders.
go. So
It came out in 2016, so last year.
yeah, so kind of glad that he animated. But Adam West, the funny thing is that if you follow him in general, he did a lot of voice acting. I
Hmm.
mean, just the ones that I remember. I mean, let's not ignoring Family Guy because everyone knows him for that one. But I mean, like, he did a lot of guest star. He was on Johnny Bravo, and that was, again, it's
He was on the
Adam
Sims.
West.
He was
Adam
on the
West being,
Simpsons when they're
yeah, the
talking about
Simpsons one is
the
classic.
Batman.
That's another classic one that everyone remembers, that really captures his eccentricness. Uh, a lot of people don't realize he Conan O'Brien, before he really became famous, when he was just a writer for SNL and later The Simpsons. Conan O'Brien pitched a pilot for a series called, I'm trying to remember the name of it, where Adam West played, again. It was a joke parody kind of thing of
Mm.
your typical detective story, but it's about a washed up actor who still believes that he's a detective that he used to be in the shows that he was, and so he tries to help the police even though but it's played like Adam West. You know
Right.
what I mean? Just like kind of how like Christopher Walken just kind of plays Christopher Walken
Yeah,
in
yeah.
all his movies. So here's like this character who plays himself like crazy Adam West in this situation where it's like, yeah, I'm a detective because I played one on television, and it's just, and again, written Conan O'Brien style. So
Oh
it's
God.
just, it's out there. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. The whole pilot of 22 minutes is out there. It's hilarious. But again, like, there's so much stuff that this man did, and I mean, he only passed away like recently, and now like all this new information is starting to surface from various actors and stuff about how he was a ladies' man, and how he would engage in multiple women activity, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah. And Burt Ward going, when I first got on the show, I was only 20 years old. The most I ever did with a girl was kiss a girl. Here I
Uh,
go, I meet Adam West, and all of a sudden it's like every night is just more than a 20-year-old guy can handle. Yeah. But I mean, he was amazing. He was, and I guess the best way to put it is like, he was all West. Like
Pure
all the Batmans that would
West.
come afterwards from a live action standpoint would have sculpted armor or some, and I don't want I love Michael Keaton, But Michael Keaton, I'm sorry, he's like 150 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah.
He's not exactly an imposing figure.
I
You
feel
know.
that like more so Christian Bale and Ben Affleck have actually put on the weight and the muscle, even
Yeah,
though they technically don't need it. But there's scenes where they're going to be topless and they have to like look
or
like they're a
even
guy that went through the ringer.
or
You
even
know?
like again, a lot of people feel he was the worst Batman, George Clooney, but
Yeah.
George Clooney at least was tall, kind of has a little bit of a muscle structure to him. You know, I mean, everyone loves Michael Keaton, but I think like physically, I think he's the most separated of them
Well,
all.
but that was why everyone. From what I hear, because I don't think I was old enough to even know about the clamor about
Oh yeah,
that movie
totally, me
about coming out.
neither.
People were like, "The Beetlejuice guy, really? You
Well,
want him to be
that was
Batman?"
the negativity stemmed from that because it was like, well, this is a guy that was known for comedy, but
Well, he's known for
I
comedy,
think
and Beetlejuice wasn't, the most buff looking guy. He had like a pot belly and just
yeah.
disgusting.
But the funny thing is like in case of Adam West, what was great about him is long after the '66 Batman series ended, um, he would continue to be a part of that role because and this is oddly enough how I encountered Adam West for the first time without even knowing it was my first real encounter with Batman. My earliest memories of him growing up uh, outside of, let's say, a comic book here and there. And because, I mean, I almost feel like none of us could truly remember when we first learned about Batman because he's such a pop culture icon. It just comes into your life and you don't even know it. But one of the first things I remember of him was there was this local video store near my parents' house where I used to grow up,
Yep,
and they
yep.
had a VHS called Batman, part of the Superpowers Action Collection, which is not related to Super Friends. It was
Hmm.
its own Batman standalone adventures, and it was like 5 episodes on one VHS. And there's two dubs of this, and apparently the VHS versions of the dubs were dubbed by Adam West, and at the time, Casey Kasem would do the role of Robin, done in his more his more what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Not Shaggy. Oh my God. Yeah, well, he did Shaggy, but more of his cliff jumpery kind of sounding
Okay,
voice.
okay.
That was kind of his Robin. So, but Adam West was the Batman in that, and I remember watching those as a kid. And that was some of my very first experiences of like seeing the Joker, seeing Riddler, Catwoman, and stuff, and the interpretations of that. I believe Filmation did that. I'm trying to remember what company, or it was probably Hanna Barbera, because if it
Hmm.
was Superpowers.
Okay.
So and then he would go on. He would do more and that was like him doing voice acting in those early years. Imagine. So he was first doing voice acting for Batman stuff, and he would still keep doing live action appearances in the suits for commercials. And then I remember there was this live action show called Legion of the Superheroes, not Legion Super Legends of the Superheroes, which Adam West again um, reprised the role. And that was kind of like, again, it was like a roast slash parody of superheroes and stuff from the
Oh,
DC.
okay, okay.
And that's where they had, I forget what his name was. I think it was Brother Man or Soul
Ghetto
Man.
Man, I think.
Ghetto Man, there you go.
It's
And you
so
have,
bad.
I know, but Adam West was in that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
Ghetto Man, which I'm pretty sure you could, I don't know who it was that played Ghetto Man. I think it was some famous black comedian back then. But
I don't
I
think it
mean,
was Jimmy
he
Walker.
kept revisiting the Batman character because, like, again, those Hanna Barbera cartoons were late '70s. When he was on Super Friends,
Hmm.
again replacing I forget what his name was, who played Batman's voice for the longest time, and then he passed away or something, and Adam West replaced him. That was like '84. So here he is, Batman again in '84, and he kept revisiting it. I remember when he passed away, Adam West, everyone kept mentioning the Grey Ghost episode from the Kevin Conroy
Mm.
Fox Batman the Animated Series, where he played, in a lot of ways, the prototype Batman to Batman.
Yeah.
So like this was a guy who stayed true literally every decade of his life after being Batman, did something Batman related
Because
just to keep it fresh. And you could understand someone like him being typecasted into that but he
I think
embraced
at
it.
I think at first he was like very against it, and then he kind of steered into it. It's very similar to William Shatner, where he was just like, and then he's like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna embrace it and totally go with it.
Well, you know what? I think that, you could, when you look at it and you go, it's so many people love what you do, number one, for that role. And I understand, people want diversity in life sometimes too and everything, but when you've done so much in your life and people remember you for something like that and millions of people love you for that, if you embrace it and I always say, if something in your life gives you an advantage,
Mm.
whatever that is, play that shit up. You know, don't say, oh, like, I understand, like, sometimes people, they don't like, having some things that they're born with in life, but sometimes, if you're born tall, hey, try some basketball, might work out for you. You
Try
know
some
what I mean?
football.
Try some football. If you're born left-handed, try to be a pitcher in baseball. It might
Mm.
work out for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, so in his case, life gave him this great opportunity, and that this franchise character that's, larger than life, and to many people he was their Batman. You play that up, you will pretty much have a job for life. You know what I mean? Like, well, I mean, I don't want to, like, knock on Ernie Hudson, but as long as he keeps playing up Ghostbuster stuff, he could have a job for life. You know what I mean? He'll always have a spot at a convention, and he'll always have like a cameo or stuff.
Yeah, he usually does a bunch of other stuff too,
Well,
so
that's what
that's
I'm saying.
good.
He does a lot of voice acting and
Hmm.
everything. So, I mean, it gives you that pop culture. And now, more than ever today, how important pop culture is, more than ever from a marketing standpoint. I think that I almost feel today, no, if anything, every actor wants to get into a superhero situation because they know just how long they're made in terms of money. You know,
Yeah,
you like you could look at, like, say, like someone like Hugh Jackman that maybe kind of wants to get out of the role, but Lord knows when he got into Wolverine, he would have never imagined that he'd be making money for 20 years.
yeah.
Off of one character. Sure, he did a whole bunch of other movies in between, but if he did just Wolverine, he'd be doing just fine.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing. Adam West was someone that he didn't take it away from him, and I look at his profile, and it's like every, like, 3 to 5 years he's doing something Batman related until the day he died.
Yeah,
Literally. Like, he never, ignored what he had going for him. And he did stuff in between, like everyone knows him again for Family Guy.
yeah,
But ultimately in the end, he never forgot what made him famous, and he still right. And again, we go back to William Shatner. I mean, it's the same thing. He never forgot what made him famous. He did other stuff in between. He tried. I remember Tech Wars is one of them, and a whole bunch of other
T.J.
stuff.
Hooker.
Yeah, T.J. Hooker. But ultimately, in the end, when you have a legion of fans, and Legion is saying it lightly, when you have a legion of fans that loves what you do for that thing, you can't just ignore that. You know what I mean? You got to embrace it and show the love because you became famous. That car you're driving, that house you have, was bought from that. You know. Anything you want to touch on him?
A few things. I know, like when you were recounting about the show being on YTV, I was like, okay, yeah, that was probably one of the first ones that I saw, and like I think watching the movies, the two movies that came out by Tim Burton, I was like, yeah, where's Robin? That's really weird. And then finally seeing the animated show, and then
Sorry to cut you
eventually
off.
Robin shows up.
Sorry to cut you off. So you saw the '66 Batman series on YTV in
Yep.
'92 before seeing the Tim Burton movies. Okay, just
No, it was not before seeing the Tim Burton, but it was like probably in between. Like I started seeing it on YTV, then someone gave me
a
a
VHS.
bootleg copy of the
Okay.
VHS, which I ran into the ground, um, and seeing that. But then I was just like, well, where's Robin? Like, there's supposed to be a Robin, right?
Played by
Getting some.
Damian Wayans.
I had like a die-cast Batman Cadillac,
Oh, that is true.
the Batmobile. But like Robin was missing from the seat. There's a lot of stuff missing from it. But that was like someone's toy that they gave to me. Like, oh,
Well,
my son doesn't really want this, care for this. Here, have it. And I was like,
well,
ooh,
yeah.
cool,
You
Batman.
specifically, you specifically had the very famous 1966 Corgi Batmobile,
Hmm.
which was, like, for the longest time, it was worth a lot of money. That
Oh, mine
Batmobile.
was
Yeah,
banged
yours
up.
was
That
beat
was
to shit.
played to
No,
shit.
no, that's the thing with that Batmobile is that it has so many things that could get lost on it.
Yeah.
that, I mean, to have one in perfect condition is big money, but I mean, the point is you owned that as a child,
Hmm.
which was pretty cool.
There was that. And yeah, to me, that was my Batman at the time, and for a good while as a kid. And it's really cool. Like that's one of those shows where you can bond with your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your parents. Like they see that, and then you're singing along the song, and they'll sing along with you. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago, and she was saying she was watching it with her uncle, and he would get her to sing one part of the song and he'd sing the other part of the song. So he'd do the na na nas and she'd do the Batman part. And he's like, okay, now you go Batman. Okay, na na na. Okay, you go Batman. So like I think there was a lot of bonding that happened like during that time it was out. So I mean, it's definitely something kids would definitely pick up on. And I think at the same time around the movie, the Batman Returns, uh, Batman being on YTV. I think one of our defunct Canadian retailers, Zellers, had a promotion and they
Yes.
actually used animation with that specifically looking Batman and Robin telling folks about the new sales at Zellers and blah 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 about the
The
toy
Law
section.
of Toyland. I
Yeah,
remember that.
exactly.
Oh, I
So
remember that. Yeah.
so that ties in as well because everyone knew the '60s Batman, and like you could totally build play it up on that.
Well,
I
as you were mentioning before about like the bonding and stuff, well, a lot of people tend to forget, like, again, the parents of our generation, us who had like 60s parents,
hmm
um, they were in their teens when this show came out. I
yeah.
mean, my mother was born in 1951, so
hmm
that would have made her 15 years old when that show came out.
Yep.
So that's right away. It's a generational thing too. You sit down and you watch it and you appreciate it as a child, while on your parents are probably sitting in the living room with you, and they remember watching it when they were probably maybe around your age.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
And also speaking of like adult influences, like I remember watching the movie what was it? Kick Ass, there we go. And Nicolas Cage is in it and he plays Big Daddy. But I remember the first time I watched it, I'm like, why is he speaking so weirdly when he's Big Daddy when he has the mask on? And when I watched it the second time, I was just thinking to myself, well, let's see. Okay, he's funding their whole thing with old comic books. Okay, so he's a comic book nerd, and then it clicked in my head. Oh my God, he's a big fan of '60s Batman. He's purposely speaking like Adam West in Batman, and like that kind of opened my eyes. Like rewatch that movie, Kick Ass, the first one, and pay attention to how Nicolas Cage just talks when he's Big Daddy. When he has the mask on and everything, he speaks like Adam West from Batman on purpose. Because to him, that's the badass Batman. He doesn't have to like change his voice or make it all gravelly. Like he just changes the way he speaks, and it
I,
seems very weird. It seems
I,
very
you know
very
what?
weird.
And I've always loved that iteration of Batman too. Like, when he passed away, Adam West, I posted. I always feel it's one of my favorite scenes, and it's related to the Bat 2C, but
Mm,
it's like if you could take out the Bat 2C, and that wasn't the part of the scene that I was. It's that I remember because me, I'm not big on drinking alcohol at all, and I remember Batman. He goes into the bar, and then he goes up to the counter. Everyone's drinking alcohol, and he's just like, "A tall, fresh orange juice, please." And it's just like, my brother, it's just like, that's all he wants. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm the same way. A lot of times, like people at TFCon, they'll be like, hey, could I buy you a drink? And I'll be like, you could get me an orange juice, which actually is more expensive than buying me booze in a lot of cases. So I apologize if you want to buy me a drink. Maybe get me a Coke or something. That'll be cheaper.
Oh,
Maybe.
and something else I remember. Well, I don't think it was specifically about Adam West, but more about the show. Was there was a guy an older man that used to do like a pod, like a it was like old it was like old people on movies. So it was like two veterans of the film industry, like they're retired and stuff, and they're watching new movies and just reviewing them. One of them apparently used to work on the old '60s Batman, and I think he was one of the writers or something like that. And he said the whole point of that show wasn't necessarily that Batman saved the day all the time. It was more he wanted Robin to learn a lesson. So it's always interesting, like when you rewatch the show, like Robin's trying to figure out stuff, and Batman kind of has the answers, but he's just kind of letting Robin
It's almost
figure
like
it
he's
out.
training him.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that
But
was that was something that was also unique about that version of Batman was that I always felt like that Batman was almost anointed as part of the police
yeah,
because he would get a call from them. That Batmobile had a siren on the top of it, which a lot of
yep,
people never noticed. Um, when he would go to the police, he'd work with them closely. He was almost like literally
and the
like
mayor,
a part of the police.
and
It
the
was
mayor
it,
too.
yeah, and it's just I always found that interesting about that was it was an interesting take on it. I remember reading somewhere. I think it was maybe because when I was watching the DVDs when I bought the box set, I remember reading somewhere too that they wanted to do a season after season three,
Hmm.
but they ended up not doing it because then they found out that the set for the Batcave and stuff was destroyed because they
Ah,
thought like, oh, this is the last season and stuff, and so they
yeah, yeah.
destroyed the set, and it's like, oh, that's fucking terrible. Yeah, all those lettered and labeled stuff completely destroyed. Another thing too that I loved about that show, everything was labeled. Yeah, everything was labeled. If it said phone, it would say phone next to it. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so that's that more or less about Adam West. We'll miss him. He was an awesome guy.
Very much so.
Um, I was actually getting shit from a fellow person who lives in this house because we didn't get to go meet him, which is
Ah,
yeah.
but that was such a long line. Did you at least get to go see Burt Ward though?
No, well, see, that's the
That
thing.
was like a
Like
no line.
Adam West was always, someone that was at these conventions that I would go to, whether it be Montreal Comic Con, Fan Expo, and stuff, but always busy lines.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is I always had other goals. It was always like, oh, I got to meet Stanley. Oh, I got to meet Leonard Nimoy. I got to meet these other ones where I feel like they were the ones that if it's now or never.
Hmm.
I always felt in my mind, and it's sad, I'd always have a chance to meet Adam West. He's not going nowhere. You know, he look how young and spry he is.
Yeah.
I guess I was wrong. Never got that chance. Kind of like me with Dusty Rhodes. That was another one that I look back and I go, man, should have met him.
Don't
But
know what you got till it's gone.
yeah, it's always how it is. Anyways, we'll miss you, Adam West. You were awesome, and hope you're doing the Bat 2 scene. You have it there. Okay.
Go find Eartha Kitt. Have
Yeah.
fun.
Yes.